Welcome back, everyone, to our special program here in our Palo Alto studios of theCUBE. I'm John Furrier, host of theCUBE. We are doing a CUBE special with the NYSE wire community with Brian Bauman and the team. Really building a new network of a community, kind of an ad hoc network between Silicon Valley here in our CUBE studio and the NYSE, our new home on the East Coast. It's our new access points, bringing the network effect and our communities together. It's a really fun project and it's growing like crazy, so check it out. Ben Luce here, Chief Financial Officer at Aisera. Great to have you on, Ben. We've been following the company progress for a while. You guys are really doing an amazing job on the AI, so congratulations and welcome to the CUBE Wired Network with theCUBE and NYSE.
Thanks for having me here, John.
So when Brian Bauman and I were talking about the AI CFO, Bonnie, me, Kevin, and we're just riffing and we're like, we felt it was like a good idea because I've been getting signals on theCUBE, like CFOs are talking about stuff that, I'd be like, CFO, don't count the beans and they're like the decision compliance, risk management, but all the hard problems that were being solved were kind of falling right into the intersection of the CFO and the old IT platform and data groups. It's like it was a nexus of action, and cybersecurity shows that. You're starting to see with the chatbots going into agentic systems, the role of data, that's a balance sheet. Should it be on the balance sheet or not? Like, again, all these new issues are coming up that are material to the business model. And so we're like, okay, we got to do this. It's been great. And what we found so far, and we chatted prior coming on, it is an issue. It's an opportunity. So what's your thoughts on this role of the CFO with AI? Because, as we were just riffing on the previous segment, you kind of got the blueprints, you kind of got the structure, the financial strategy is aligning with the business strategy, and it's hand in glove, and money flows, and business values created.
So
flywheel.
So if you think about what we're doing here at Aisera, we're building AI agents for a lot of our Fortune 1000 customers. I mean, the beauty of what we've been doing is that we've been fortunate enough to have been doing this for several years. We've got probably, almost a quarter of my customers are Fortune 1000 and up, so very big logos. And what we're seeing is that CFOs are not just approaching AI as a cost-cutting tool. Yes, you have to, some of the CIOs whom we engage with have to justify to the CFO, people like myself, what is the ROI, what's the return to justify the project and the spend, right? But at the same time, they're also partnering with the business leaders to really understand what is the engagement, productivity enhancements that the employees can get. Both whether it's for internal facing or for their outward facing customers. So when we engage with customers, it's both on a CIO level, the other CXO level, it's not just CIO and CFO. It's really a collaborative conversation about, hey, what is the cost savings? But also at the same time, how do we increase engagement? How do we make our employees more productive? When we deploy our AI agents, we're automating a lot of the mundane, repetitive tasks that frankly, a lot of employees may not want to do, right?
Yeah. And you bring up a good point because like productivity is kind of like, you got to unpack that. There's a lot going on under the covers there. Data, domain expertise, cost, labor. I mean, I think it was Mark Andreessen, I forget who said it, when cloud came, 10x engineer. Meaning back before that, you had to get 10 engineers to do full stack development, in comes the cloud. We're seeing kind of the 10x business person because the productivity gain on the business side is significant with agentic. So how do you forecast that? That drop to the bottom line? Does it increase? So all these new things come up. What's your take on the whole 10x business value, productivity equation? How should CFOs implementing these systems, one, justify that, and just thoughts on how to frame it?
Yeah, so typically for us, if you think about software, right? If you think about SaaS, historically it's been much more seat-based or consumption-based model, right? Yeah. For us, it's much more of we call it value-based pricing. And what I mean by that is historically software is a tool that employees can use to create value, create outcomes. Yeah. For us, we're flipping it on its head with our AI agents where we're actually helping to deliver value on its own. So we're automating certain tasks, like let's say, for instance, on the IT side, whether it's password reset or software provisioning, repetitive, mundane tasks that your IT desk, frankly, don't want to have to do all the time for employees. Same thing from the HR side. How do I get an employment verification letter for, let's say if I want to get a mortgage, or, what's my PTO balance? I want to apply for a paternity leave or maternity leave. So these things that are rather repetitive. Our AI agents can automate that. So when you think about the productivity gains and both from employer and employee engagement as well as the cost savings, that's where I think there's a ton of excitement. And so when we think about value-based pricing, we price our products, on a value side, is how do we deliver that value? How do we demonstrate that there is actual value that you can get and calculate? And that's how we price. So it's a new form of
Is it
consuming
subscription?
software.
Is it usage?
It's
Because
more
this comes up as a CFO question. Is we were talking about this last night with John Griffin from Meter, and he's ex-Amazonian, spun out. It's like, okay, that's all they do. I mean, subscription seems so old because you can, with microservices, you can measure everything. Why not just do usage and just have this usage tentacles everywhere? Is that how you see it?
Yeah.
That's
So
maybe a bad way to
no,
describe it.
it's a great example because what we are doing is, to go back what I said earlier, the software industry started out as perpetual licensing, right, on-prem, and then went to the cloud with seat-based and then consumption. For us, because it's much more value-based, is the principle is, let's say I save you, John, $10, right? Let's share $1 or $2 of that for us in terms of that deployment cost. So for us, it's much more on a request basis, how many requests you need, and we'll continue to price according to that request based on the complexity of the tasks, right? At some point over time, the AI industry is still very new. It's still in its infancy stage. I think you can continue to see that pricing model continue to evolve. But ultimately, it really comes down to what is the outcome? What is the value that we can deliver for the customers, and how do we price that accordingly?
Ben, you bring up a good point because there's so much going on. My mind's getting blown a little bit, but let's go to the customer. Remember the cloud came out? Oh, that's how they're going to consume technology. How are you seeing customers consume? Now, they also got to buy it too. I like the pricing model. Clearly, it's going to go to a usage model. There's no doubt in my mind. But now I got to consume technology different because I'm also implementing it differently. What's your view of the customer side when you have those conversations? Obviously, they're going to do POCs, but when they think steady state, rolling out agentic systems, what's the mindset? What are some of the, I won't say blockers, hurdles that you got to go through? What's the resilience framework? I mean, a lot of things are going on. What's the customer's piece of it?
No, absolutely, John. It's a great question because AI is still, frankly, very new, right? So we still have to educate a lot of our customers on how you deploy AI, how do you get value. To your point, what are some of the blockers you had asked is typically we work and engage with the customers up front, and how do we get access to your data? Right. First of all, we need to get access to the data, and then how do we make sure that there are the right security guardrails around the data, so that if you, John, were looking for making a change to your home address, you can't go to Brian profile and change his home address, right? How do we make sure that there are guardrails in place to ensure that, because our AI agents are able to do that autonomously, independently, right?
You're talking about system to system or human involved or both?
No, sometimes we actually the beauty of agentic AI is that the AI agents can autonomously perform and execute tasks, complete them without involving a human, right? So I think to your point earlier, where we are in this maturity curve, AI is still very new. So we have seen a lot of customers, asking for pilots and POCs. But the beauty of what I can contribute to you is the fact that because Aisera has been doing AI for numerous years, because we've been on this journey with our customers for several years now, I would say, 75% of my business, 75% of my AR today are multi-year contracts. So what that means is that
it's a relationship.
Yes. So, but also means that most of my customers are actually not doing POCs and pilots. They have done that maybe in years past, but we've demonstrated to them what the value is, what the economic and tangible, realizable economic value that they see. So to a CFO, he loves to hear that there's value that he can put into his spreadsheet. And so because of that, our customers have been in full deployment production mode for numerous years. And because of that experience, we're able to apply that expertise, that trusted advisor role that we play to a lot of customers to educate them on the fact that, hey, if you're going to deploy AI, you need to know how good is your data, right? You need to know what type of security parameters and guardrails you want to put on that. And to your point earlier around the domain side of it is, the beauty of what we do is at Aisera, we create this independent cognitive layer that sits above all other systems and applications with access to, unstructured and structured data. And because of that access, we've been able to create a lot of domain-specific models for our customers, meaning a domain for IT, domain for HR, domain for CX, so that when we come in to deploy that for you, if you want IT or HR, we know all the right taxonomy, the ontology, all the prompting. We know how to deploy that specifically to that domain.
And you guys do the integration too?
Yes. So we come in, do the
'Cause I have
integration.
data too.
Yeah, so we have right out of box
You have
over
small language models.
Yeah,
basically.
exactly. So we've got over 100 plus integration and connectors already. So we can connect to your ServiceNow, we can connect to your Workday, we can connect to your Zendesk, whomever, and we come in, and because a lot of the company enterprise's data, about probably 70% of the data, are unstructured, you know, because we're that independent layer, we can actually access all of that data and enable it for the
What I love about what
customer.
you guys are doing is that, because it's kind of what we're doing with theCUBE and the NYC Wired network. It's an intricate network of things going on at any given time. And at any piece you want to connect in contextually. You mentioned ServiceNow. ServiceNow is a gold mine for AI because they have so much data and they have workflows. And so you got to connect into them. You don't want to take a non-connect. You got to have that domain expertise. But they have the data. They're consuming the AI. So this brings up the CFO question of, how do I know what I'm dealing with here? Are they producing AI, or am I going to be the consumer? Am I building a hybrid? So the big question is, there are companies that fall into multiple camps: consumer of AI and producers of AI. When you're producing AI like you guys, you're producing AI, right?
That's correct.
I would consume that
Yes.
as a customer, but I might want to make some AI. So there might be a hybrid. Do you see hybrid? Unpack this for us.
No, absolutely. So, because, as I mentioned earlier, AI still is early in its infancy. I think GPT just came out literally 2 years ago, right? People are still trying to figure out how to use it. There are a lot of customers that we see who are trying to do what I call DIY, right? So in some ways, to your point, build it themselves, right? How do I take foundational models from GPT, et cetera, and how do I create and consume and produce my own AI internally? Right? We've seen customers do that, but what happens is that they fail repeatedly when they try it. Not only because, not for lack of resources, right? Don't get me wrong. A lot of these enterprises, Fortune 100 customers have all the, they're not lacking for resources. But the challenge is that when you build your models, AI, on the traditional foundational general purpose models, because they're general purpose, they are more prone to hallucinations. They don't have the accuracy. They don't even have stability, right? Or consistency. And what I mean by consistency is, how do you get the same answer when you ask it the same question at different times? It's like talking to your kids. They keep on asking you, can you do this, do that, every different way.
All the time.
Exactly. So when customers try to do it themselves, when they build it themselves, they consume it themselves, that's the challenge that they run into, right? It's not so much as the data or security. I mean, they manage all of that themselves. It's the fact that the underlying foundational model just doesn't have that latency, accuracy, or consistency. That's why they come to folks like us who can provide that AI agent, agentic AI platform.
One of the things you bring up that comes up a lot on theCUBE from a technology perspective is memory. Not high bandwidth memory that's on the chips. But like, where's that prompt? I save it. This is like a whole nother dynamic. So as a CFO, I guess my question to you is, as you look at the CFOs implementing multi-year relationships with Aisera, how are they unpacking and doing a forensic on the relationship to get at ROI and, I don't know, modeling the value? Because one, they're going to pay for it, but also they're going to have value on their side, because you're bringing the product, they create value, they can then pass that on to either savings or top line revenue, which is essentially making more money. How are they unpacking it all?
So before we sign a customer as a client, or before you even deploy, we go into what we call a BVA analysis, so a business value assessment, right? We talk to a customer, understand, hey, what are the workflows that you're looking for? What are some of the pain points that your employees have? And what are the costs for you to cost to serve and help those employees? And we do that analysis and say, hey, you know what? Based on your cost basis today, this is how much we can save. You heard what I said earlier. If I can save you $10, if we share, $1 or $2, hopefully, we'll all both be happy, right? And so when we go through that BVA analysis with the customer, we show them this is the type of value you can realize by deploying Aisera. Sometimes there's not a lot of value, and they say, hey, you know what? Maybe we can part ways. We can have a conversation later on. But oftentimes they find that there is executive alignment on that value that they can achieve. And once we actually deploy the customers, we have the analytics that we can show the customer, hey, this is every week, month, this is the usage, your request, your adoption. And then our CSMs, our customer success managers, have they're dedicated to specific accounts, and they have monthly or quarterly meetings with them to review their uses and the value that they're getting.
So Ben, I got to ask you, as a finance CFO and also in the persona on the other side of the table, what's the biggest change that you're seeing mechanically and culturally, both, what the system itself, the workflows on your side and what you're seeing on the other side, and then what's happening culturally, because the CFOs are elevating up into everything from cyber to business model transformation.
I think from a CFO standpoint, I think what we've noticed is that we need to also be much more partnered with our CISO or CIO to really understand that sometimes a lot of the AI deployments is not just about cost, right? As I mentioned earlier, yes, we need to justify the ROI to the CFO, to the board, to the CEO, but you also need to make sure that the deployment is within the has protected data governance and guardrails. So I can't make a decision on my own to say, hey, this saves me X dollars, we should deploy it. Well, I have to partner with the CISO, the CIO, the CTO to make sure that, hey, if we deploy, are the protections in place to make sure that the data is safe, it's accurate, and that we can actually deliver the value that we want.
And the customer side that you're working with, what are some observations you're seeing there? Can you share any anecdotal, like, man, this is the best thing that's ever, or man, I'm up to my eyeballs in savings. I got to figure out the revenue model. Where are some of the, again, we're going to growth stage, so there's always going to be pain points. Sometimes they're good pain points, sometimes they're not. What are some of the good pain points or observations on the good side you're seeing on the customer?
It's one, I'll give you one example. So one of our Fortune 100 customers who's been with us for years and they've continued to expand with us, their CIO actually flew out to our office to give a keynote to our employees. And what he said was an interesting comment to me as a CFO, right? He said, Ben, when we deployed Aisera in our company, I had to create an ROI model to justify it to the CFO, right? But he said, that was not the reason I decided to go with you guys. The reason was we wanted to see that employee engagement, productivity improvements, and efficiency gains. So the ROI in this conversation, at least for him as a decision maker, was more around the intangible productivity improvements rather than the hard dollar. So we're seeing some of that conversation evolve a little bit where it's more of a holistic conversation discussion. But what's interesting, John, is that if you rewind maybe a year plus ago, more of the companies were afraid of AI. When GPT just came out, they were worried about, is it accurate? Is it going to, give us the right answers? Is it too slow? Is it going to take a long time? How do I employ it? So people were more scared. Today, there's a little bit more of appreciation of like, okay, I understand there are data and governance challenges that we need to get a better handle of, but how do we get around that so that we can deploy?
That customer story is so compelling because this is actually a real power dynamic that's positive and negative, depending how you look at it. If that person didn't justify the ROI model to the CFO, he wouldn't have got it approved. I'm sure they had a good working relationship. Got to trust the owner of the project. Did he jury rig the numbers? I can't say. But sometimes there's vanity metrics to kind of get things through the knothole. And he's now the champion of that project. It was successful. It wasn't a clear ROI until he demonstrated it. So that's a good thing. That's an example of creativity. Report, he justified through, so who knows? But some companies block stuff like this. If they don't follow the form, the heat shield, nothing gets approved, and sometimes they don't trust, then there's no innovation ever going to happen. Because a lot of the benefits of new technology kind of happens downstream, and it's kind of like, oh, surprise and delight. Yeah, we got the ROI we talked about, but this surpasses all the ROI. So you got to know what you're looking for. Sometimes you don't. You have to be kind of aware of it. It just might pop up. Talk about this dynamic, because stuff might not get approved if CFOs are too hardcore of rejecting everything.
No, absolutely. So that's one of the things that we've continued to learn and experience with our customers, is that the most successful deployments, the most successful and happiest customers, frankly, are ones where there is multiple executive alignment and multiple executive touch points. So, I have a conversation with their CFO, our head of sales has a conversation with the CIO, and our CEO has a conversation in direct, alignment with their C-suite, right? So I think if you bring that partnership to the table, both from our side as the customer side, you reduce some of that friction where, hey, it's just a hard yes or no line in the sand about, does the numbers make sense, right? Oftentimes, as I said in that other example, it's not just the numbers itself, right?
Ben, thanks for coming on theCUBE. We went over a little bit there, but great insight from the CFO perspective. Great job at your company. Been following you guys, innovating there, but also on your peers. Thanks for sharing that. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
I'm Jeff. We're here at theCUBE plus the NYC Wired community. It's our new open network connecting Silicon Valley and Wall Street. Thanks for watching.